Hi, good day, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who is here today. I'm still seeing people joining us. So while we wait for perhaps another minute while more people start joining, just like to welcome all of you here who are here today for our session. Right, we still have a few participants. Happy to see that all of you are here today. All right, I think we'll be starting soon. So just once again, thank you for joining us for this virtual lecture this evening here. My name is Kelvin. I'm based in Singapore for the Asia campus of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So this is the first in a series of 6 lectures that will be conducted by our faculty members from the university. So this series will break down the world of aviation into bite-sized pieces that you can easily understand, okay, as well as run through some of its applications. So you can see here on the screen that we still have several other sessions okay, after today. So if you have not yet registered yourself for the other lectures in this series, you can still do so because the applications are still open. So today's topic will be on flying is safer than driving. So it's an introduction to behavioral science. This will be delivered by Dr. Somi. She's here with us today. Now I will just hand it over to her for her to start the session. Somi, please. I'll stop my sharing.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Can everybody see me, actually?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you. I can see a lot of you already too, which is great. Well, welcome. Thank you, Kelvin, for the introduction. My name is Somi. Some of you might have known me already. I can see some of my students' names as well, which is great. Okay. Today, as Kelvin suggested, I would talk about behavioral science and how it's related to the aviation industry.
Hello.
Hi. I can hear you too.
I just want to ask if this session is recorded.
Is it recorded? Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, that was actually good because I wanted to tell you that if you want to be on mute, of course, that's fine. But I always want my students to interrupt me anytime I talk, to be honest. So if you want to ask me any questions during the lecture, please go ahead and do so. So again, very warm welcome. It's a very rainy evening here in Singapore. Some of you are, actually a lot of you are not from Singapore, so I don't know what the weather is going to be like, but I'm really happy that you are joining me in this Monday evening. I hope that you're going to have a good time. And as I already said, please do let me know if you have any questions during the lecture. Okay, now I would like to share my slide with you. Oops, that was not supposed to show up. That was my last slide. But there you go. Okay, so my topic today is behavioral science. And yes, flying is safer than driving. I will tell you very soon that it is true. It is a fact. Okay, first of all, I just wanted to quickly introduce who we are. So we are in Singapore. We are the Asia campus of the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in the United States. That's where our main campus is. I am pretty sure a lot of you don't know how to say the full name of our university yet, which is great. My own mom already asked me like 10 times, so where do you work? Then I said, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Asia. But it is a very big name in the States. It is a very big name in the aviation industry, and we are very proud. And what about me? As my name suggests, I am Korean. And hey, somebody's drawing something. That's okay. Okay. Yes, I am from Korea. And some of my students told me, yes. Oh, that's okay. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. Yes. Some of my students asked me, oh, do you know that there is a singer called Somi? I do know she's stealing all my thunders these days, but I am not a K-pop singer. I can't sing. We just share the name, right? And unlike that, I am an economist actually. So without further ado, let me get into my slides. Oh, actually, before I start, I just wanted to ask you, if you want to introduce yourself, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves, if you want to tell me where you're from, please go ahead and put it in the chat box. And during the break time, we will have some break time. So during the break time, I'll make sure I have a look and see whether I can respond to your questions. And I also want to know where you guys are from, right? Okay, let's start. Behavioral science. What is it? So as the name suggests, it is a study of human behavior, right? It's about how human behaves and how humans make decisions. The interesting thing about behavioral science is that it's not just from one discipline. So it borrows ideas from economics, psychology, sociology, and even neuroscience. So we look at what the brains actually act when we are looking at certain times when people make decisions. And I am an economist, as I mentioned before. So today's topic probably will be a bit closer to behavioral economics, although, as I said, it's a juxtaposition of different disciplines. So um, it's not that different from simple behavioral science. So behavioral economics is an area of economics where we actually incorporate insights from psychology into the traditional theories of economics. Okay, so how is it really different from the traditional economics, this behavioral economics? So for that, I actually wanted to ask you guys something. Okay, I have just launched a poll. You might have taken economics classes before. You don't have to. Please tell me, what do you think economics is about? Actually, to be more specific, economics in traditional sense. Here, I'll give you a little bit of time so that you can do it. Okay, votes are still coming in, so I'm still waiting for it. No more? I think some people are sleeping. No? Anyone else wants to vote? Okay, this is interesting. I'm just going to end it. So this, I'll give you 5 seconds. If nobody else is voting, I will just end poll and I can share the results with you guys.
Don't end. Hello. Yes.
What are you writing? Hello. Yes, hello to you too. Okay, I'm gonna end poll right now and share results with you guys. Oh, that's great. What do you think economics is about? Yes, it is actually about managing scarce resources. Surprisingly, actually not surprisingly, a lot of you chose money. A lot of my students also, when I first asked them in my first class, what do you think economics is about? They go money, right? It's actually not just about money. It's about managing scarce resources, right? What is scarce? Our time and money. We don't have indefinite amount of money, right? We only have certain amount of money. We only have certain amount of time, right? And sorry, if for those of you who raised And I might actually get to you a little bit later, right? But thank you for raising your hands. I'll get back to you very soon. Okay, let's get back to the slide. So how is it different from the traditional economics? It's great to know that some of you already know that economics in traditional sense is about managing scarce resources, right? Now, that was behavioral science, by the way. And what was the sign? The sign was the fire, right? Behavioral science is like fire. Then what is traditional economics is about? Now I have the snow sign here, so it's a bit more cold. Maybe it's a bit more calculating, but not in the negative sense. So traditional economics assumes that all people are rational, right? So that is a basis for traditional economic theories. And what do you mean by that? What do you mean everyone is rational? So first of all, rational people make decisions to maximize their utility or happiness. And the rational people also prefer more to less. Well, if you want to use a jargon, we call it the principle of non-satiation. If you want to look smart, you can use that word. But actually, those two things may still be true in behavioral economics. So what is the main difference? Main difference is that in traditional thinking, the rational people will use all the information available to them when making a decision. So when I said calculating earlier on, in traditional theories, we believe that if there's a lot of information, the economic agent can actually process everything, compute the risks and benefits and whatnot, and then can make a sound decision. That's a traditional economic thinking, right? But behavioral science challenges that notion. Behavioral economics, if you believe in it, says that actually that is not exactly true. Okay, before I get more into that, let me just give you a quick review about how I want this lecture to be run. So in this lecture, I really want you guys to think about these two things. Firstly, hot versus cold, right? So how would people behave in the traditional economic theories? That's the cold camp, right? But what about in behavioral economics? That's the hot camp. And then the next thing that I want you guys to think about is, so what, right? Okay, behavioral economics is full of fun facts that I'm going to present. But you may say that, so what? How would this affect us? Does it affect us at all, right? If it does, then what could we do about it? That's what I want you guys to really think about, okay? All right. So remember I just told you traditionalists believe that all human beings are rational people, right? But then behavioral economists say that no, actually people may be quite irrational. So when they make a decision, they can make a pretty irrational decision, right? One of the very popular examples is called left digit bias. So can you see here that I'm sharing these examples of advertising for airfares? So we have there's from $14.99. There's an amazing deal starting from $9.99, $3,079, and there's also $399 and then $89. So what is the common ground here? That it finishes with 9 basically, right? So left digit bias tells you that people actually put too much weight on the left side rather than the right side. So if you compare $14.99, the fare of $14.99 to $1,500, for example, it's just a $1 difference. Well, in this example, it's in rupee, so it's a 1 rupee difference, right? Which is not much. But people actually think that that is a very, very big difference. And they have actually done the experiment where if the fare, for example, was $499, and then $10 increase will make it $509, right? And that increase is just $10. But what if the fare was 509? And then $10 increase as usual, 519. So in these two scenarios, the fare actually has increased exactly by $10, right? But people feel it much more when it increased from 499 to 509 rather than 509 to 519. And the sales will actually drop more if you raised it from 499 to 509. As opposed to when you're in the 500s already and then raise it by $10, right? So let me ask you this then. I just asked you that in this lecture, I want you guys to think about hot versus cold, right? So what would behavior economists say? What would traditional economists say, right? And then, so what, right? So first of all, this is how people behave according to behavior economists. If you believe in traditional economic theory that everybody is rational, everyone should know, right? Everyone should know that the fare increase of $10 should be $10. It shouldn't really have such a great impact just because in one case, the left digit changed. In the other case, it didn't, right? But many experiments, numerous experiments, experiment after experiment found that left digit bias is present. And actually that's not surprising because as you can see in these airfare examples, all the companies use that because they know that the tricks work, right? So what? What should we do about it? Well, it depends if you're the buyer or the seller, right? So if you want to sell a certain item, you know that there is left digit bias, so you probably want to price it something like 49, 499, so on and so forth, right? On the other hand, if you're in the buyer side, perhaps don't get too hot. When you see these airfares, don't get too excited and thinking that this is a great deal. Cool down first, invite your cold reasoning side, and then see that actually I shouldn't put too much weight on the left side digit, right? Okay, so that was number one fun fact about behavioral economics. Any questions at this point, by the way? Someone actually raised a hand before. But I think that person who raised hand now, this raised a hand already. Okay, that's fine. All right, I just did a quick check on the chat room, which is not that easy to see. Okay, there are lots of questions coming through, which is great. So, okay, yes, Nilesh Kiran, you raised hand. Would you like to ask a question? It's easier if you can actually speak. Or would you like to type instead? Nilesh, are you there? Anyone would like to ask any questions? Okay. I think maybe we're having technical difficulties, but I promise you that I will go through your questions. If you can't speak up right now, if you do have a question, please do put in the chat box, then I will go and
Hello.
check. Hi, is that Nilesh or is it someone else?
It's Nilesh. So the reason behind the prices being $5 and 4.99, oh no, yeah, prices ending with 99. So that's because of the left digit bias, right? Because 3 is less
Yes.
than 4. And is there any scientific ground behind this?
Well, that's the thing. People think that actually the brain works different ways. So it's not just this left digit bias, but there are other biases that I'm going to introduce. Basically, scientists weren't sure what's happening. And then when they actually do some experiments, hooked people's brain into those machines, they could see that actually brains work in a certain way that we didn't know. And
Okay.
that is affecting this kind of bias.
And
So
is
it turned out that we are sort of programmed like that. And people actually have different theories about it. They think maybe it's something to do with evolution. But the fact is, we don't know for sure why. But we can say that something in our brains make us do this.
okay? And
Okay?
should behavioral science be taken before tradition? No, like while making decisions, should behavioral science be considered uh, in more places compared to the rational belief?
I think you should combine them together. Because the thing is, until pretty recently, maybe until about 10 years ago, people didn't take behavioral science seriously. They thought it's just anomaly. People are still rational. We should still follow traditional thinking. Then from about 10 years ago or more than 10 years ago, people really started to look into this. And now actually a lot of people use behavioral science into policy making and things like that.
So
So
is
I think it
motivation
has to go together.
okay? So is motivational research something related to behavioral science?
I think it does, especially in the later, more recent topics. In a lot of social science field, behavioral science is considered a bit more advanced topic. I think just because that most of those management science or social science was built based on the more traditional way of thinking. And then now actually more and more people look into this behavioral science. Okay,
Okay. So
thank you very
and
much, Nilesh.
yeah.
If you do have more questions, please do. I'll give you some more time later.
Yeah.
And you can also write down in the chat. You can email me a lot of different things you can do. And really, thank you very much for your input.
Hello.
Thank you.
Okay. Or someone else would like to speak? I'll just give I'll just take one more question at this point.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyone?
Hello. I have.
Yes. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. What is this class about? Is it economics or aviation?
Both. It is on economics, and it will touch the area of aviation.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm listening.
Okay,
Nice
that's
plan.
great. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. It's good to see. Good to see you. Good to hear you guys. Really. Alrighty. So that was number one fun fact for behavior economics. Let me move on. Availability bias is a second fun fact that I would like to talk about with you. There is a lot of biases, obviously, in behavior economics. So we do look at a lot of biases that our mind plays. So one of them is availability bias, and this is related to the title of this lecture. Flying is safer than driving, right? All right, okay, so what is availability bias? The definition is that people put too much weight to a small number of vivid observations. Okay, so what does that really mean? What is a small number of vivid observations? What is vivid observations? So I want to actually show you that. And since my link is not working very well, give me a second. I want to share a video with you guys.
Tonight, now images coming in of the deadly plane crash in India. Authorities say at least 17 people were killed, including both pilots. 123 injured, the Air India passenger jet skidding off the runway, breaking apart, trying to land in heavy rain. ABC's Gio Benitez covers transportation.
Tonight, the harrowing images, an Air India Express plane carrying 190 people splitting into two pieces, crashing as it overshot the runway during rough weather in Calicut, India, killing at least 17 on board, including both pilots. More than a dozen rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Parts of the plane completely ripped open, the interior a mangled mess, but incredibly no fire.
It was at the end of a very long flight from Dubai, and so there wasn't much fuel on board. This meant that there was not a fire, which probably saved countless lives.
The 737 flying into torrential rains at the time of the crash. This is a notoriously tough airport to land at, considered a tabletop with a gorge on each end of the runway, leaving little room for error.
Indian authorities have cited this airport as having too much rubber buildup on the runway, which means that when an aircraft touches down and the runway is wet, it makes it extra slick, extra hard to stop. They'll want to know whether that was a factor in tonight's mishap.
And Tom, tonight we've learned that the passengers on that flight were actually returning to India after being stranded because of COVID-19. Now 2 investigative teams are on their way to that crash site. Tom.
Devastating.
Okay, so this was a very sad event that happened. And this is an example of a vivid observation. This vivid observation is usually fueled by the media. Well, it is not their fault. It is a very spectacular event that gives you spectacular visuals, right? It's very tragic, but it caught people's eyes, and that's why the media like to report these things. If there is a big crash like this, it won't just get one day attention. You'll get a lot of other follow-up coverage as well. And this forms very vivid observations to people. And this makes people believe that flying is much, much more dangerous than it is because of this vivid image. Actually, even my mom, and my mom is a retired professor. She's a very intelligent lady. And I told her that I'm giving this talk to you guys, and I was so excited about it. She asked me, what is the topic of your lecture? So I said, oh, flying is safer than driving. And then my mom goes, I don't think so. Like really, with a very cold look, she's like, I don't think so, right? So she is the victim of availability bias as well. Why? Because statistics actually suggest otherwise. Yes, I do know that this statistics is just for 2015 and just for US, but having said that, I did a quick check. It didn't really change that much afterwards. Okay, so let me get to this. First of all, first thing you can notice is that statistics that are presented here is much harder to interpret, isn't it? So that YouTube video that I just shared with you of the tragic accident, it's easy to see. You can understand much more easily. But then statistics, which is a fact, is actually more difficult to process. So in US, for instance, this is a fact, right? There were 32,166 fatal motor accidents, and there was about 35,000 deaths. And in 2015, actually, aviation in the States had a pretty good year. So there were 27 airline accidents, but there was 0 deaths, right? Even then, when you see this, you're like, okay, I'm not sure about this. But how about this point? Oops, sorry. This third bullet point. So 1 in 114 chance of dying in a car crash, as opposed to 1 in 9,821 chance of dying in a plane crash, right? So this is a fact. But when people watch those videos, people are gonna forget about the statistics, right? And people may think that, oh, maybe it might have been the case before, but I think this is much more dangerous these days. Flying is dangerous.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yes, it's not dangerous. Yes, do what? Okay, so that is...
Flying is safer.
Yes, flying is safer. So that is availability bias, right? Going back there, availability bias tells you that people put too much weight to a small number of vivid observations. They don't know that whether it is actually more dangerous. They don't know that whether there are that many air crashes. But when they see those coverage, media coverage, they do believe that, and it's quite hard to change their minds, to be honest. Okay. Now, oh, before that, actually, I wanted to share with you some car crash compilation too, but I think I'll just save that for later. Because I was thinking, if I just showed you that video of air crash, and then if my students also show availability bias, they're only gonna remember that, and then they're gonna take out from this lecture that flying is not safer than driving. That is not true. I do actually have car crash video too, but I think I'll save that for later. For now. Okay. So moving on. I think aviation actually quite often becomes a victim of availability bias, right? So one of the examples was the air crash. The other examples is, I believe that is related to the current situation, this outbreak of coronavirus. Now, these are some of the headlines that you would see in the media, right? It shows you that how Singapore Airlines slashes 96% of capacity, which sounds, quite vivid, which sounds terrible, right? And then we also have leisure travel is not available anymore, right? That is also quite a striking thing. And then there is a Thai pilot now has to deliver food on his motorbike. Well, there was a report by CNN. So all these things surround us, all this media coverage, these form those vivid observations as well, right? So should we really be concerned about choosing a career in aviation? I actually had a poll that I wanted to share with you to get your opinions. Let me see. I just launched another poll. Can I actually ask you guys to answer this as well? The COVID-19 made me think twice about choosing a career in aviation. I'll give you some time to answer. I think most of you have answered, so let me share the results with you. Okay, this is good. So the COVID-19 made me think twice about choosing a career in aviation. Actually, 37% of you said yes, that is true. 63% of you said no, right? Okay. Why did I want to know about this? Because I believe that that question is also a realm of availability bias. So first of all, this coronavirus, if you actually just think about it, if you gather all the information and think about it, statistically speaking, it is very, very, very rare event, right? This is quite something like a once in a lifetime event where that nobody can fly out, right? Except for the really essential flights. It affected aviation very, very negatively, as we all know. But the chances of an outbreak like this or any other event of this scale happen again and affect the aviation will be actually very slim, right? This was completely external factor. But it can still affect you because you see all these observations, right? But I think especially for younger students and high school students like you guys, it really shouldn't affect too much because by the time you finish studying and go to your workforce, probably the logic tells you that things will be more or less back to normal. And also it will be very, very unlikely that something of this scale that affects aviation negatively will happen again, right? So if you don't think about the COVID and this outbreak, this external factor, actually aviation was really enjoying growth all over the world. It had a really good job prospect as well. That didn't really change in my opinion. but it's been halted for a short period of time. Well, arguably short period of time. Some may think that it takes a few more years. Some may think that's a long enough period of time. But in the scheme of things, usually in economics, 3-4 years isn't considered too long a period. So what I'm trying to say is sometimes when something really bad happens, it may actually affect your decision, right? But when you actually get all the information, and then when you think about it in terms of more statistics, logic, and reason, you may actually change your decision. You may actually think again. All right. Okay, so that is availability bias. Now, try to go to the next slide. Okay, how are we doing so far? Is everybody all shocked? Some people sleeping, or are we having fun? Because I would like to suggest a short break. Then I can check out what you guys wrote in the chat room, and then whether I can see whether I can answer some more questions and things like that. Oh, so you are having fun. Somebody's having fun. That's good. Somebody circled the dancing logo. Okay, that's great. I am very happy. So thank you, guys. Great, great. Oh, great. I actually would like to have a quick look at the chat room. The best. I wonder whether it's just one person doing this. One person is having a good time, and then the other people are all like meh like this. Hopefully not. All right, guys. I am going to stop sharing. Now probably you can see me. I would like to propose 5-minute break. I want to have a quick look at what you guys have to say. If there's anything that I want to mention with the other students here. So please don't go away. Come back. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay? So quick break starts now. Hello, everybody. Are we all here? Yes. I have to apologize that there is a lot of message coming through. It's very difficult for me to check all of them. So I haven't been able to actually answer you guys' questions, which really pains me to be honest, because I do like to talk to you guys. So perhaps at the end of the session, maybe I can try to answer more questions. But if you do have a question and if I can't really get to it in time, I apologize, but I will try to get to you. And I just disabled you guys drawing because there is too much drawing going on. So I'm sorry that I killed all your fun. Alrighty, let's get back to it. And then one more time, I am very sorry that I couldn't really answer your questions all the time. Okay, I'm just trying to see who raised hands. Does anyone want to ask a question? I see some people raising hands, but I must apologize. It's very difficult for me to see at the moment. Does anyone would like to ask any questions before I start? 2 participants raised hands. Who are you? Could I please hear from you? Oh, 3. Nilesh, I think maybe you have already. Can I ask Ankita? Ankita, would you like to ask a question? You're on mute, by the way. If not, I'll move on to Kevin.
Yeah, I want to ask a question. So could you just explain the procedure of becoming a pilot for both for Indian and for outside or abroad?
I'm sorry, Ankita, it's very difficult to hear. I think the connection is quite bad or your mic is not
I
very
would
good.
like to know the procedure of becoming a pilot.
Procedure of becoming a pilot, that's all I got. Is
Yeah.
it right? Okay. You know what, that question, I think I'll send you the answer privately later, or I'll ask some of our lovely staff to get back to you.
Somi, if we may.
Yes, sure, Christy.
Ankita, thank you for the question. For students who have specific questions about careers in aviation and aerospace and what are the degree programs you need to study or what kind of flight programs you need to be aware of, you can just wait till the end of the session and we will be happy to help you out. You can speak to some of the admissions representatives from the university who can answer your question better. At this point, we'd like to answer more questions related directly to the lecture that we are having today. So if you have something that you want to specifically ask about whatever the subject that we've covered so far, then please feel free to ask those questions now. And the rest of the questions related to becoming pilots, etc., we are going to address at the end of the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. So please do stay until the end of the lecture, and then I think our staff can help you out. I'll just take one more question before I move on. Kevin Rodriguez, you raised your hand. Would you like to ask a question? Kevin, no?
Hi,
Okay.
can you hear me, Somi?
Yes, I can. I can hear you very well.
All right. So these availability biases which we just did, can we say the cloud people's minds about certain things, about purchasing certain things and endeavoring themselves into certain things? So how can we remove these biases from people's minds more effectively?
Actually, that's a really good question, Kevin. And yes, I was gonna talk about a little bit towards the end, but the father of behavior economics he's called father of behavior economics. His name is Richard Thaler. He actually has something called like the nudge squad, and he does look and develop policies to actually trying to get rid of the most bias, the bias as much as possible, basically, right? And he suggested a few different ways depending on what it is. So for availability bias, I think what is important is that if you don't think people are actually getting the truth, the policymaker, or you could be the business owner, or you could be whoever it is. If you think your target audience is suffering from the availability bias, you just have to really make it clear about the facts, right? So in this example, because it's really clouding their minds with small, vivid observations, you have to provide information, but it has to be in a way that's quite easily understandable. So I can't give you like one answer to it, obviously, because depending on what situation we're talking about, there is a different way to deal with it. So remember the example that I showed you, like the flying is safer than driving. And a lot of people suffer from the availability bias, thinking that actually flying is more dangerous. Then in that case, if you work in the aviation industry, for example, if you want to debunk the myth, then you do have to perhaps also go to the media and trying to present the fact, the statistics. But remember, I also told you that our brains take those vivid observations much, much easier than the statistics and facts. So then it becomes your job as the industry advocates or policymakers to actually design this information to distribute this information in the way that's easy to understand. So remember in my example here, I personally think that this third example, like 1 in 114 chance of dying versus 1 in 9,821 chance of dying, is probably the easiest way to understand for people rather than the other statistics. So that is what you should do. So basically you have to provide the information with a fact, but you have to make sure that it has to be interesting and catchy enough, basically.
All right,
I
thank you
hope
so
that
much.
answered your
Yeah,
question well. Thank you for the great question. It's a really great question. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Again, apologies if I don't get to everyone's question, but I will check it at the end. If I can't answer your questions during this session, I will answer the question. I'll try to answer you after the session or through email or whatnot. So please forgive me. Why can I still see this? Is there a way to actually delete this? I thought I disabled the annotation, but it is actually not helping. Okay. Oh, can I erase it? Yeah, I can. Okay.
The one who has done this can only rub it.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna go back. Let's have some more fun. What other bias should we talk about? All right. The next one that I want to talk about is that people care about fairness. For this one, I want to do a very short and quick experiment. Two volunteers, right? I would like to have 2 volunteers, but the 2 people actually shouldn't know each other. Can I actually get 2 of you who are raising your hands? Ishan and Sakshi?
Yes.
Sakshi? Ishan? You guys don't know each other, right?
No, ma'am. No.
Okay. So who do I have? 2 volunteers. Sorry, it's very difficult to see.
Ma'am.
Me and Rishabh can do it. We both know each other actually.
Okay, you shouldn't know each other for this experiment to work. So I'm just gonna pick Ishan and yes?
I had a doubt. This is Ishan.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way we could get the PPT that you're sharing right now?
I'm sorry? You would like to share something?
No, is there any way we could get the PPT that you're sharing right now?
Yes, I can arrange that.
Okay.
So yeah, I will talk to our staff and see whether it's
Even I would like to
possible.
have the PPT.
Okay, yes, I will see what I can do. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. So Ishan. Is it Ishan?
He has muted himself.
Yes, it's Ishan.
Okay, Ishan and the other person I unmuted turned out to be
Shikraj.
Shikaraj. Okay, can you 2 be my volunteers? Okay, so
Yes,
this is the
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is the game. We call it ultimatum game. So 2 strangers, you guys don't know each other, right?
No.
Okay,
No.
good. You are splitting a prize of $100. Well, it's fictional. I don't have the $100 to give you, but it's an experiment. So let's say we have a prize of $100. You are splitting. Now, Ishan can decide what the split will be, right? So how much you're going to keep, how much you're going to give. Excuse my pronunciation. Shikaraj?
Shikraj.
Right? Shikaraj. Okay, so
Yes.
Ishan can decide how much Ishan will keep and how much to give to Shikaraj, right? And Shikaraj can decide whether to accept the split or not, right? But if Shikaraj doesn't reject the offer, then none of them can get anything. right? So
Yes,
Ishan,
ma'am.
what will be the split? How much would you like to keep and how much would you like to give it to
I'll give
Shikaraj?
all the $100 to him. I'll give all of it to him.
Huh? Okay. And Shikaraj?
I will accept that offer.
Okay. This, you know what? This is the first time I have this.
That
This
is really nice
great.
of you.
I
Ma'am, it
know.
would rather be better if one of them like takes 50, like the person who is decides to split, he should be taking 49 and he should be giving it 50, the other person 51, so that he cannot reject the offer because he's getting more than half.
Is that Prerna?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, yes, you are also very fair. Well, Ishan surprised me. Prerna is also very fair. And Shakraj is the lucky one here, obviously. Okay. And this one actually really shows you the difference about the classical economic thinking and behavioral economic thinking. So this result that we have now with Ishan and Shikaraj, that actually, actually in most experiments, it was more like Prerna's prediction. Excuse me if my pronunciation of your name is not very good. So in most experiments, it was almost 50-50. So the first person who offered the split offered something like 50-50, and then the second person accepted it. If the first person offered a very unfair split, like he keeps 99 and the other only gets 1, then the second person rejects and nobody got anything. So that's consistently the results of the experiment, right? Well, in our classroom, it was even better. It was very generous offer, right?
I was actually expecting him to be kind too, and he would give me 50 of the 100 that I gave him.
Okay, great. But you know what? In classical economic theory, do you know what the split is that classical economists predict? It's actually 99 and 1. Why? Because think about it. So here we said people care about fairness. Fairness is not what rational economic agent necessarily think about. If you only think rationally, getting $1 is better than 0, right? So if the first person offered $1 to Shikaraj and then Ishan said he's gonna keep 99, Shikaraj should actually accept if he's rational economic agent, because if he rejects, he gets 0. If he accepts, he gets $1. 1 is better than 0, right? So that is classical economic thinking, and that's what classical economic theory suggests that should happen. But time after time, we do many experiments. It's always consistent, the results. People care about fairness. So if actually Ishan suggests $99 to 1 split, most of the times Shikarajis will reject. He would rather not get anything than get $1, right? So this is people care about fairness, one of the so-called fun facts of behavioral economics. Again, remember I asked you to think about so what question? So what, right? So again, this is what you should think about if you own a business, if you're thinking about an employee compensation, if you are trying to write up a policy, things like that, because people actually do care about fairness. And if you think that people will just think about the profits, right? And then if you actually write a policy based on that, you might be actually surprised that it doesn't work, right? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Next one is actually a really interesting one as well. It's called confirmation bias. If you're not from Singapore, you wouldn't know what double confirm means. That gives you more reason to come to Embry-Riddle and learn about double confirmation that Singaporeans love, right? Okay, confirmation bias basically means that people like to stick to their guns, right? It's a term, sticking to our guns, you probably have heard about. Again, a lot of behavioral science findings are from experiments. So there is this godfather of the experiments on confirmation bias. So what have they done? They had participants, they recruited participants to this experiment, and they asked them and divide them into two groups. One group was in favor of death penalty. The other group was opposing death penalty. Then they were given two articles. So one article was supporting death penalty, the other article is opposing death penalty. And the researchers make them read those two articles. Then they found out that those groups, if you support death penalty, they thought the article that support death penalty is much better research, much better article, much more accurate, and much more factual, and so on and so forth. And vice versa. So if you oppose the death penalty, they said that, oh, the one that's supporting the death penalty, that article wasn't very accurate. They were very critical. But then they would actually say that this article opposing the death penalty is great, it's accurate, it's factual, it's had more information, and things like that. And after that, it was found that they even strengthened their beliefs even more. So they were already supporting death penalty. After they read these two articles, and then they think the one that's with their side, that accords with their side, is better. And then after you ask them, they even more strongly believe that their previous view was right, that they would support death penalty even stronger. And same results for the other group as well. And that's what we call the confirmation bias, right? Why? Because if those two articles were given, and if both of them have convincing stories, right, about support or opposing views, perhaps it should have changed their views. But the results show that people didn't want to change their views. If anything, they actually strengthened their views. Right? So that is the confirmation bias.
So is it like a debate?
Mm-hmm. So if you were to have a debate, right, and then you were given a new piece of information, and that piece of information actually even have information that opposes your view, but you don't want to take it. That's the confirmation bias. Even given the new information, you don't take it, and you even more strongly believe what you used to believe. So you're being very stubborn, basically. That's confirmation bias. And that has been found in human races a lot.
So it's basically like a way to persuade people on facts.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, because this is important because in this day and age, we see a lot of fake news, right? It's very, very easy to create fake news. And that can actually really exacerbate the confirmation bias problem, because these people see this fake news. If that support their views, then people are just gonna feel more and more strongly about their view. Then it becomes a very polarized society, right? So again, hot versus cold, right? So if we believe in the rational thinking, when you are given new piece of information, even if it has an opposing view, if it's a very good piece of article or information, you should process it and you should perhaps alter your views. But humans don't like to do that. So so what? How can we actually go from here? So one suggestion is my last bullet point here, is that perhaps the dangerous thing is that if you are if you're trying to talk about some controversial issue, rather than just give two very polarizing us versus them kind of stance, you maybe have to provide less contrasting more multiple sort of outcomes, right? So the example that I have here is a debate of lockdown. So debate of lockdown, some people believe that if you're going to the lockdown, you can't save the economy, right? So it's a save the economy versus total lockdown. And then both sides believe their stories very strongly that you must save the economy. You cannot go into the lockdown, even though COVID may kill us, that economy is bad, then it will kill us even more, right? And then other people believe that no, we must go into the total lockdown or else there will be a lot of death. It will be horrible for the society. But it shouldn't be that way. If you put the issue like this, then confirmation bias just keep people becoming more and more polarized. So as a policymaker, probably you should try to say that actually the lockdown doesn't mean that we are just, ditching the economy. Or saving the economy doesn't mean that we have to just open everything and everyone just go everywhere freely, because that's dangerous, right? So the less contrasting the views look, then the less likely people will fall for confirmation bias. Okay, so that was one of that. Now, regression to the mean is one of the last points that I wanted to make about the behavioral economics. And here comes the statistics again. I don't know whether you guys like statistics or not, but statistics tells you facts, right? So what does regression to the mean mean? When I said the mean, it means average, right? We all know average. So if there's an average, some are higher than average, some are lower than average, and when you combine all of them, and you can calculate average. So when I said the mean, it means average, right? So extreme outcomes are followed by moderate outcomes, if you think about in terms of statistics, right? Okay, one video that I would like to share with you quickly. Okay, give me a second. Where did it go? Not this one. I'm going to change it. This one.
Well, here's Dr. Richard Thaler, father of behavioral economics, and Selena Gomez to explain.
Okay, so here's how a synthetic CDO works. Let's say I bet 10 million on a blackjack hand.
10 million because this hand is meant to represent a single mortgage bond. Okay, Selena has a pretty good hand here, showing 18, dealer showing 7. That's a really good hand for Selena. Good odds. In fact, her chances of winning this hand are 87%.
So, my odds are good. I'm on a winning streak. Everybody in this place wants to get in on the action. How could I lose, right?
Now, this is a classic error. In basketball, it's called the hot hand fallacy. A player makes a bunch of shots in a row. People are sure they're going to make the next one. People think whatever's happening now is going to continue to happen into the future. During the real estate boom, markets were going up, and people thought they would never go down.
So people who are watching and think that I won't lose will make a side bet. Now this is the first synthetic CDO.
I love Selena Gomez. I bet you 50 million she wins, and I'll give you 3-to-1 odds.
3-to-1 odds? Okay, I'll take that bet.
Now, somebody else is going to want to make a bet on the outcome of their
Bet you
bet.
50 million she wins.
That will lead to synthetic CDO number 2.
Hey, I bet you 200 million that lady in the glasses wins that bet.
She probably will win, so I want a great payoff.
How about 20-1?
Deal.
And this will go on and on with more and more synthetic CDOs.
And we can transform an original $10 million investment into billions of dollars.
You okay?
No.
Okay. Oops, I think. Sorry, guys. Give me a sec. Sorry, guys. Having technical difficulties. Okay. All right. So that was a movie clip. It's a movie called Big Short, and of course that pretty lady is Selena Gomez, and the white-haired gentleman is Richard Thaler. He's a father of behavior economics, and he talked about hot hand fallacy, right? Hot hand fallacy is a term in basketball. So when someone is hot, right? Someone is on fire, basically, a basketball player, and he keeps making three-pointers, right? He keeps thinking it in. And people believe that he's on a streak. So the next one he throws will go in as well. And this is the fallacy. This is actually an error in thinking, because if you think about statistics, right, then if this person has an odds of how good his three-pointers are, how accurate it is, and if he's been better that day, if he's been doing it better and better and better, well, it has to come down to the mean, right? Which means that actually he'll be worse. He'll get worse naturally, because that's how average works. So if he was exceptionally good, chances are actually higher that the next one and the one after will be worse than the average. So his three-pointers won't be so accurate, right? But people don't believe that, and people think when someone is on fire, then that someone is going to make it, sink it into the basket, right? The next example I have on the regression to the mean uses Israeli Air Force as an example. And this book that I put up here by Kahneman is a really great book about behavior economics and psychology. If you have time, you should have a look. Anyways, so what is it about? It's the same story again. So Professor Kahneman was giving a lecture at the Israeli Air Force, and he said that rewards work better than punishment, right? And one of the very experienced instructor, flight instructor, raised his hand and told him that no, from my experience, that is not true. So it says, actually, the punishment work better than rewards. He said, the instructor said, if someone did really well in flying, and then if he compliments him, then in the next round, he does it very badly. And if someone was so bad, so if I punish him, if I reprimand him, then that person does much better in the next round, right? But is this really true? No, because that is just statistics, and that is regression to the mean. Because, again, there has to be an average, right? For it to go to the average, for it to regress to the mean, regress to the average, if someone was exceptionally good, so he got rewards, he got praises, then the chances are that the next time he will be worse, right? And then it will average out. The other way around, if somebody was really bad and got punished, and then that person naturally will do better next time. That's just statistically, that's just what happens, right? So if you don't, again, here is the so what question, right? So if you don't think about the regression to the mean, then you would think that actually reprimanding someone, punishing someone is much better than rewards. But actually it's not true. What happens at the airfield was actually just regression to the mean. So it has to average out. Okay, so this is the last, oh, oops. I keep going to the last one. So this is the last bit of the fun part. So what do we do from here? So this is more related to my so what questions. So some of the biases may cause serious problems, right? So in that video, I don't know whether you caught it, but it was talking, they were talking about global financial crisis when the housing price kept going up and up and up and up. In the end, the bubble just burst, right? And that is because people believed in hot hand fallacy. So I mentioned it earlier about the nudge squat. This is Professor Richard Taylor's invention, really. So these people really look into designing a public policy so that people can be nudged into desirable behavior. And when you're nudging them, you have to think about all the biases that we discussed and all the irrational thinking that goes on in people's minds. So one of the examples is organ donation. So in Singapore, when I moved here after a few years, I was quite surprised to find out that the default for organ donation in Singapore for people over 21 years old is yes, yes to organ donation, unless you opted out. To opt out, you have to fill out some forms, you have to go through some process. But if you don't do anything, default is that you are donating organ, right? And it's just a very simple design, right? But that can increase the organ donation rates tremendously. Because something like organ donation is a big issue, right? But most of us, actually even me, if the default is not donating, most of the times I'll just leave it like that. So one of the things that they found is that default option has a very powerful, well, it has a real power over people. Because whatever is chosen as default, a lot of people just want to leave it as that. So if you want to design a policy, if you are running a business and if you have to actually make some kind of options for your employees, for your buyers, then you have to think about what to put as a default. Because a lot of times, again, rational people will look at all the options and decide for themselves. But a lot of times, people are irrational. We don't do that, right? Okay. So we are almost at the end of the talk. I will see whether I can give you the slides. But anywho, thank you very much. Really, thank you for spending time with me on this Monday evening or Monday afternoon. Again, I do apologize that I didn't have enough time. I have a bit more time, so I'll take some questions. But if you have any questions that I couldn't answer during today's lecture, please do not hesitate to contact me. This is my email address, or you can also ask our staff at Embry-Riddle. I know a lot of you have questions about procedural process of becoming a pilot. I'm sure our staff can help you. I really hope to see you around in Singapore. Stay safe, wear a mask, all right? And since we have about 8 minutes, I would like to take some questions. Okay, Shreya, since you are at the top of my list, would you like to ask a question? No? Can't hear? Want to sleep? How about Aisha?
Yeah, hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, okay, about confirmation bias, I normally hear this term used when, for example, what do we call that? Like human factor for safety. For example, like in flight when when there's a lot of things going on, and then, for example, the pilots will tend to take a glance at their instruments and then they just assume something based on what they think is going on because they already have something going on in their head and they're not actually processing the information that they are looking at. So apart from this application for confirmation bias, what other parts of aviation do we see this being put in play?
It could be actually everywhere, really. Like even when you're designing an aircraft, right? If you believe that certain designs are better than the others, it may not be. And if you were given information about why the other design might have advantage over your preferred one, you may not actually take it into account, right? And if you have to choose an aircraft from Boeing versus Airbus, for example, a lot of people do have preference. then even if they have like really good aircrafts and they have really strong selling points, you may actually not do that. Well, a lot of people actually do that with phones too, right? So if you are really into one type of phone, like Apple, iPhone, then maybe you don't even want to consider other phones, although they are really good too. So actually there are a lot of examples too.
Is it safe to say then that whatever type of bias we are referring to is just a matter of we are blocking out options that are actually there?
Yes, that is actually very right. Sometimes because people's minds are lazy, perhaps that we don't. It's not that we want to be lazy, but and in terms of confirmation bias, they have even done the experiment again. They hooked humans' brains into a machine and saw that apparently people become happier when they can confirm their belief. So the brains release this chemical that if they get this confirming information, they get happier. And vice versa, if they get opposing information, they want to block it out. So that's a very good observation.
I see.
Thank
I see.
you very much. I'll take one more question. Who have I? Okay. Akash, have you asked a question before?
No.
Somehow your name sounds familiar, but okay.
Yeah, so I didn't quite get the concept of the last digit bias.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Left digit bias.
Yeah.
Yeah, so left digit bias basically means that people care about what's written on the left side too much when they're looking at a price tag. Right? So when it's 499, it's actually closer to 5, right? But people's mind almost believe that it's closer to 4, which is not true.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I got it now.
Okay, great. All right. I'll take one more question. One last question, perhaps. Anyone that I haven't had a chance to get to? Shreya? Have I? Oh, Shreya wasn't around. Saran?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Hi.
Yes, hi, ma'am. How are you?
I am very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. My question is that from the beginning of the class, one thing which runs through my mind is that these all bias not just take us to the destruction phase. These bias are the reason for many advantages and many new invention things which comes from this bias. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it right or not?
It can be very wrong, these biases. So some things like left digit bias might not do much damage, right? But some of these biases can do a really great damage. So remember that hot hand fallacy. So that's how the housing bubbles kept going up because people thought housing price would just go up. And then we all know that they created a whole lot of problem. Outside US, outside the housing market, right? And even the organ donation example, it's such an important issue, right? But something as simple and almost silly as not wanting to change the default can change the organ donation rates greatly. And I think that's a really big problem and it's quite wrong, to be honest.
Okay.
That's why we want to look at these biases.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Really, thank you for your participation. It has been a really great session. I believe that our staff is going to help you with some other questions about the enrollment and courses. So do stay around if you have a question. And that's it for me today. If I haven't managed to answer any questions that you have, please do email me and I'll try to get to you. Okay? So have a great evening, afternoon, night, and everything.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Have a great day. Have a good day too, ma'am.
Hi, Sadat. We see your question, and if you could just stay on, we'll be happy to answer your question in a minute. Anyone else who has a particular question for us can feel free to stay on. If you don't have any further questions, please feel free to exit the meeting. So Sadat, I will start by addressing your question. Is Sadat around?
Yeah, Christy, I can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you for your question, Sadat. Yes, if you've done a Bachelor of Science from an Indian university, that is typically acceptable. However, I am aware that the Bachelor of Science in Indian universities tend to be a three-year university, three-year degree. And for our Master of Science degree programs, you need to have a minimum of a four-year bachelor's degree. So could you clarify if your degree program is a...
Actually, in India, it's 3 years.
It is 3 years. All right. So then that makes it a little difficult for us because you see your work experience, although it is great in terms of adding to your applicant profile and strengthening it, it does not count as academic qualification, right? So, and in order to meet our minimum academic qualification criteria, you need to have 4 years of degree qualifications. So your options are that you could potentially do 1 year of a master's program in India and then apply to our Master's of Science degree program if that's something that you are keen on doing, or you could complete your master's program in India and then apply for a second master's program with us.
Sorry to waste your time. Just one more thing. I have another piece of information I didn't mention. I was a master's program also, and it's a 2-year program in India. And the second year, I dropped out because of some personal reasons. I had to drop out. So
what did you?
And second year master's program, but I don't
Great,
have.
and that's fine. And what did you do your Master's of Science in?
So my bachelor's is in chemistry, botany, and geology, and the master's is in geology. Was
Great.
Geology.
Okay. All right. So Sadat, yes, then in that case, you definitely meet the admission criteria for any of our Master of Science programs. I'm not sure which degree program you are interested in online. We do have a bouquet of courses that you can choose from.
I have those to that. Actually, I wrote an email a few months back. Unfortunately, I didn't get a call out. So I thought this was a good opportunity to discuss it.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so sorry that you didn't get a response from our end.
No problem. Fine. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and I'm sharing my email address with you here. So if you have any follow-up questions, just feel free to drop us an email, and I'll do my best to help you out or get you the information you need.
Perfect. That sounds good. I'll write to you directly. Thanks a lot,
Great.
Christy.
Thanks so much. Anybody else who has a question we can answer? For all of you, sorry, for all of you who are asking for a PowerPoint, the PowerPoint file of this of the session today, we will definitely try our best to get that over to you. Give us a week, and we should be able to get back to you with also the recording of this entire session. Sorry, someone else was going to ask us a question.
Yeah, could you please tell us about the career options in aviation?
Right, Riddhi, thank you so much for that question. Um, Depending on what you are very keen on, there are various different options. So I know there was a lot of talk in the chat box today about becoming a pilot, but that's not definitely the only option if you're considering a career in aviation. That's just one of the options available to you. So whether you want to fly an aircraft, you could even want to fly helicopters, or you may want to fly a drone or any kind of an unmanned advanced vehicle. Um, you may want to lead the aviation and aerospace industry. So you may want to work in the business side of aviation and aerospace and aviation finance maybe. We have students who want to work in logistics and supply chain management, like with huge logistics companies, like you might have heard of FedEx or DHL or UPS. These are some of the giants of logistics in the world. So those are all careers within aviation. You may want to become someone who predicts weather patterns or tries to analyze weather patterns, and work with government agencies in the meteorology departments. That's a part of aviation. You could want to become an air traffic controller, a technician who works in aircraft maintenance, repair, overhaul. You could become someone who wants to go into space and become an astronaut, or you could become a researcher, a scientist, an innovator. All of these fall within aviation, as well as you could become an aerospace engineer. You could design spacecraft, rockets, missiles, robots, cars. All of these are different aspects of aviation. So um, a career in careers in aviation is actually a topic for a completely another session. We could speak about it for an hour. If you know what you want to do, which area of aviation you are most interested in, then email us, and we will be more than happy to help you figure things out. If you're not sure, you can still have a conversation with us. We could meet on another Zoom meeting and have a one-on-one personalized consultation or counseling session where we advise you about what your options are. Does this answer your question, Riddhi?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Anyone else who has a question for us?
I asked you in the beginning.
Hi, Ankita. Yes?
I asked you in the beginning.
What was your question? Sorry, I forgot.
How can we become a pilot?
Right. Okay. So, Ankita, I'm assuming you're from India, right?
Yeah, I am from India.
Yeah. So the process to becoming a pilot is slightly different in different countries, and it's a long process. It also, in most cases, an expensive process. At some point during your journey, you will have to do flight training. You can do flight training at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which is our university, or you could do flight training in a private flying school or a private flying academy, either in India or somewhere else. It's up to you. If you do flight training with Embry-Riddle, you will be doing it at one of our US campuses. We have 2 campuses in the US that offer flight trainings to students. That's located at Daytona Beach, Florida, and Prescott, Arizona. When we say flight training, what that basically means is we own our own aircraft. So we have more than 50 aircraft on campus. You get into, these are smaller aircraft, not like the commercial, aircraft that you fly in, but smaller ones for just 2 or 3 people. And you get into the plane and you are with the flight instructor, and they take you up for an hour and you do these practice sessions almost every week. All right. And you also do ground simulations, which basically means that you get into a machine that exactly simulates or replicates your flying experience so that you can then learn what to do, how to react in emergency situations, like if you are in stormy weather or if you're stuck in some kind of other kind of you're in an air crash or whatever. So those are the options that are available to you. Some people mentioned that you do need to go through an FAA medical test. FAA medical test because we are under the Federal Aviation Administration, because we are a US university, but your country has a centralized governing body as well that conducts these medical exams, which will basically check for various aspects including night blindness, including many other aspects of your overall physical readiness to be a pilot, and only then you can start flight instruction. All right. And there are, as I mentioned, there's a lot of cost involved because jet fuel is very expensive. So each time you go out with an instructor, you're basically paying for that fuel, you're paying for that instructor's time. So flight training typically is something that is pretty costly. And we can share the costs with you. We can share the pathway with you. It's as I mentioned, we have to go into a lot of details because it's kind of long and it's different for each country. So even after getting the license from a particular country, you may need to have to sit for some exams and do some conversions on your side. So which we can help you with to understand. We have a lot of graduates from our university who are currently pilots in India. They work with Indigo, they work with Air India, with Jet Airways, and many others. So we could connect you with them. So Ankita, if you do have further questions, again, I'm sharing my email address. Kelvin, could you just share our email address with everybody? It's asia@erau.edu. Oh, there it is at the bottom of the slide. You can see it. And that is where you need to write in, and we can schedule another session with you one-on-one where we explain the whole process to you. Do include your parents in these sessions. It's important to get them in on these discussions early so they can also understand what you have to do and how we can help you. Does that answer your question, Ankita?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else?
Hello.
Hi.
So do you think you really need a degree to become a pilot, in this situation?
In most cases, no, but in situations where, and you have to understand that the uh, the industry for pilots is dictated by supply and demand. So when there is a huge demand for pilots, a lot of airlines, typically smaller airlines, will be ready to hire even if someone does not have a degree. All they will be concerned about is whether you have the commercial pilot license and what kind of experience you have, how many hours of flight you've completed, right? But in cases, during times in the industry when there is an oversupply of pilots, then it will become increasingly difficult to find employment, particularly with top airlines, with top international airlines, if you don't have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. It wasn't the case for many years in the past, but increasingly as the years are passing, a minimum bachelor's degree is becoming a minimum qualification requirement asked by most airlines. So if you're looking at top airlines in the world like Cathay Pacific, Singapore Airlines, Etihad, Qatar, Emirates, Lufthansa, then these are airlines that typically ask for a bachelor's degree from pilots who are coming in externally, unless you're doing their own cadet training program. Some of them offer that, in which case you're paying a huge sum of money to the airlines and they are okay with you not having a degree qualification. Was that helpful?
Oh, okay. So, having a degree is really, really helpful. That's what you're saying, right?
It is helpful also because it gives you a backup. You see, there are instances in the industry when pilots, there is an over demand of pilots and you may or may not be called upon to, for your shifts. So you may be, you may have to take a pay cut or you may be retrenched. So when you lose your job, if you have nothing else to fall back on, then it's an extremely difficult situation. So we do get a lot of pilots in their late 30s who come back to us to get a degree because they realize that they need something else for their careers. So a bachelor's degree in something like aeronautics would basically help you find alternate career options as well. It will make you highly employable if your pilot career at some point doesn't take off.
Oh, okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mukund. Hi, Sakshi. You want to become an astronaut? And okay. If you want to become an astronaut, you have several options available to you. Typically, students would start with a degree that would allow them to get the theoretical knowledge first. Students do bachelor's and then they follow it up with master's. Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, as a university, has 6 students who have graduated and become astronauts with NASA. They are students who've gone into the space program. One of them is a flight director. 2 of them are women. So we are obviously one of these universities that's accomplished in helping our students achieve the dream of becoming astronauts. You have several different programs that you can choose from with us. There's an astrophysics program, there's an astronomy program, there's a program in space physics, there's also a program in engineering physics, and then there's a program in aerospace engineering. You can choose from any of these degrees. What I would highly recommend to you is to first go to our website and have a look at our degree programs, particularly these degree programs. You have to go to www.erau.edu. Let me put that over there for you. And I would also highly recommend that you send an email to us so that we can schedule a separate Zoom or Skype meeting with you, with your parents, and we will take you through each of these degree programs, the admission requirements for these programs, what kind of tests you need to give. You need to have an SAT score, what kind of score you need to prepare, and based on your educational qualifications, whether you have physics, whether you have math, what kind of marks you need for physics, math, etc. Based on all of that, we can guide you towards the degree program that's the right fit for you in order to become an astronaut. Does that sound helpful and something you'd be interested in, Sakshi? All right, great, Sakshi. I look forward to hearing from all of you. It was a very, very good discussion. Thank you so much for staying on for the extra minutes to do this with us. As I said before, if you have any further questions, just email us. We will make sure to reach out to you, schedule another meeting or session with you where we can talk face to face and answer all of your questions and help guide you and counsel you in the right direction so you can make informed choices. Is there anything else? If not, thank you very much. And you guys have a great evening. Sorry.
Thank you so much. The session was very helpful.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You're welcome. You too. You're a biology student, Sakshi. That's a little tricky. You need to have physics and math as very, very critical components. Let's talk. Let's talk again. You can do an SAT subject test to prove your proficiency in that subject. All right, guys. Have a good evening, all right? You guys take care. Stay safe. Kelvin, any last words?
No, for me, everyone, just thanks for being here. Yeah, we look forward to hearing more from you if you have any questions.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.